Hey everyone, this is Charles with Discover the Beast Coaching. On today's episode, we have Liberty Cairde. And Liberty is a trusted coach of mine, a trusted friend of mine. We've known each other for a few years. We actually met in coach training for NLP. And Liberty surprised me one evening when we were doing our online coaching buddy session. And it was at that time that I knew in my mind, if I ever did something like this, Liberty is going to be a person that I interview. What you're going to hear is a small segment of a long interview we did, and I'm cutting it into pieces. This piece that you're going to hear now is special. Liberty is a trauma coach. She helps people get over trauma that they have experienced in their life, and she does it with a twist. Liberty is into kink, and she coaches kink. For those that don't know what kink is, think of maybe BDSM, bondage, discipline, sadistic masochist. And for myself, I had a representation, an image of what that is that I got many, many years ago. And I'll let her tell you more, and you'll probably hear how we came into this. But anyway, here's Liberty. Thought I was going to let you off the hook with that one. Okay, so let me give a little background here. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
So for the audience, all right, and if she starts blushing, don't pay any attention to her. Okay. All right.
I love the humiliation.
I know. Yeah, I know, right? Okay, so Liberty and I met in our INLP course, and Liberty was the person that volunteered to help me with my coaching session to show that I had a grasp for this whole thing and everything else. And we were coaching buddies together for a while. And so we're doing this coaching session, I believe it was. And I think it was my turn to coach her, I believe. And
those Friday night shoes.
Yeah. And just in the middle of conversation, she's just talking, and she said, blah, 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 BDSM, and blah, 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 blah. And, it was one of those, like, did I hear that? Is that what I heard? So I went back and for the audience, BDSM is, I don't even
bondage, discipline, sadism, and masochism.
There we go. Okay, so I had an experience way back in the day in New York when clubs were popular, and I walked into a BDSM, and a guy was strung up, and it was quite unnerving to me. So I ran out, and ever since then, the representation was something that I wasn't comfortable with. And I'm not going to go into great visual detail of that. Right.
Everyone can do that on their own.
Yeah, you can go do that on your own. But then I'm talking to Liberty. Now, she looks completely harmless. I would think most of my audience agrees. She looks completely harmless, very innocent, incredibly innocent. But she has this way about her. So I want her to go ahead and maybe break some of the stereotypes that one may have, and to because BDSM may be looked at as sort of fringy or sort of outside the norm. I promise you that Liberty has the ability to make it understandable. She chunks it in a beautiful way. So I'm going to turn it over to Liberty. And Liberty, I know you have two things that you do. I've already am aware of self-care for zombies, and I'm going to ask you to go into that a little bit. But the floor is yours. Tell us about your coaching for the BDSM side of the house.
Okay. So basically what I do, I teach people how to take their kinks and their fetishes and learn about them in a healthy way. And I find that safety is very important, psychological safety. And so I help people see like why they're doing what they're doing, and ways to do it in a safe, healthy way. And that's one piece of what I do. And that's just the standard kink coaching. I'll help a submissive work through a scene, help them figure out what would be safe to ask for, how to basically be safe in a scene. And I can also work with DOMs, but I tend to have the submissives that gravitate towards me. No surprise there. But then in my personal coaching that I do in relationships, I will find ways that trauma has come up, and I will help someone find the key elements of their trauma, whether they felt trapped, or whether whatever emotions they felt, shame, whatever those emotions were, and the key elements were, like, were they tied, were they held down, were there certain words used, was there certain smells, certain sensations, certain body positions, any of the key elements of the experience. And then we take that and we formulate that in our minds, and we work through a healthy version of that would put that person in a more autonomous position. If they want to be submissive in the scene, they can, but they are choosing how they want to be submissive in the scene. Or if they want to be in control of the scene, how they want to be a dominant in the scene. And I help them work through in their mind first how this works. And so they can basically play it out in their mind, lay down that neural pathway, and have that corrective experience in their mind, and then help them get the courage to take this with a partner, or with themselves. I don't really suggest a lot of BDSM play by yourself, especially with like strangulation play or anything, or bondage. That can get really dangerous to do on your own. So some of that stuff, like you would need a trusting partner. And I also teach them like how to discern what would be a trusting dominant in a situation. So basically it's finding, what would be safe for them, what would help them feel like they've created, because what I do is I create a standalone scene for the because a lot of what I do is flashback recovery. So when we have flashbacks, we have pictures or unwanted body sensations or unwanted words that we hear. And so I help them create a new standalone with that, based on the key elements of whatever keeps coming up. And so we have this new picture of like, okay, yes, I see this picture of this disgusting event that I never want to remember again. But I also have this picture of this good event that I had that was very, very erotic. And it doesn't have to be erotic. It can be just the sensory of it, because that's a lot of BDSM. People think BDSM is sex. Not all BDSM is sex. Yes, some of it involves sex, but a lot of it is just body sensations and just mental. And
Wait a
so
minute.
that's
Now, can you elaborate on that? Because I think that is something that it is always talked about in a sexual context. So, but what you just said was that seems to be a smaller portion of it.
yeah, sex is a very, very small portion of BDSM. BDSM is very body sensation focused, very emotion focused, very mental focused. Because typically, when you're negotiating a scene, well, me as a dominant, I will find like what sensations do they want to have, what emotions do they want to feel, how do they want it to play out, what are their limits. and where are they at, and where are they at emotionally now, and what do they want to feel, and how am I going to create that? And a lot of it is like, I want to feel a stingy pain. I want to feel comfort after. I want to feel mild humiliation, and I want to feel aroused. Okay, like working in those parameters, as a dominant, I can create whatever scene appeals to
Okay.
me and takes on those aspects.
Okay. So now in that aspect of your coaching, do you find that when somebody finds their way to you as a coach, not necessarily as a partner, but as a coach, is there a lot of foundational work that needs to be done? Is the person uh, maybe in inner conflict? Are they having some conflict within themselves?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why I do the IFS work. I find, well, I look for their motives. I look for why they like what they like. Excuse me.
Mhm.
Is it due to trauma? Is it due to just imagination and wanting to try something? So that's first and foremost. I look for the motivations,
Okay.
why they're doing what they're doing, whether it's trauma, whether it's self-harm, whether it's just being curious.
Okay. And I would imagine that depending on their motive would lead to where you're going to go next with them.
Right, right. And then we can do IFS work to figure out, what these parts want, what their needs are, what their beliefs are, and what they want. Because that's something I'm learning with all of this is, our parts are active even during, the, you know, partnered sex play, but definitely in a coaching scene, it's very parts focused because that's what we're doing. And I don't have sex with my clients, but we are able to work through scenes because it doesn't involve sex. It involves, whatever sensation they want to have.
Mhm.
Um, and I have strong boundaries about that. And we've talked about that before. So a lot of people will come into this thinking that they're going to get sex out of it, and that's not BDSM. Some BDSM does have sex involved when you're working in a relationship, in a partner situation, or even a polyamorous situation. But for the coaching aspect, it's not sex. It's creating a standalone memory for these events, or helping you to create your scene that you want to experience so that you can take it wherever you want to take it with a partner, to get you the confidence that you need so that you're like, okay, like this is acceptable, this is not harming anyone else, safe, sane, consensual, risk aware, consensual kink. So there's rack, it, so everyone knows like what the safety of it is. I think it's important to work with a coach so that they can help you get to the safety aspects of it, because a lot of us know things that others coming into it don't know. Like we know how to check for, whether the rope is too tight, or how to check someone's nonverbals on if they're really handling it well. Because on the surface they have their adrenaline pumping, they don't know like how hurt they're getting. And some of us that do a lot of edge play, we need to be very cognizant of the body nonverbals that people give off. There's a lot to it,
Mm.
but it's very, very therapeutic if you do it right. But if you do it wrong, there is a high chance of re-traumatization. So that's why it's very important to be very safe with it.
So it sounds like what you're doing is taking a person's trauma, uh, uh, sort of reframing it a little bit, working with them and their parts to find what can work for that person in that situation or in that scene, and then creating a new picture around it. Now, have you found that that has helped with a person's trauma?
I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
as anyone can, but I know personally for me, that was the one thing that did help my recovery, my flashbacks, was to have those corrective experiences. And I call them my requiem because when I'm doing because I'm a little, I'm a dominant little. A lot of times I will have my pacifier, I will have my stuffy, and I will sing to myself or I will listen to music. And so I call them like requiems because it's re-experiencing that trauma. And personally for me, that was the one thing that helped me. And that's why I'm so adamant about sharing sharing what I have learned, and what I learned through my errors along the way too, so that I can help other people, free themselves, because it's definitely a mental prison that we keep ourselves in with the trauma. And so I know you told me, sorry, I have a little cold. You told me a long time ago that we all have the key. We just have to find it.
Yeah.
It's in us. It's not out there. And that was a painful truth to hear at the time, but that was one of the things that really helped me. It really did help me. So I thank you for sharing that piece of wisdom. And so I want to share with the world how they can help themselves, free themselves from flashbacks, from, any kind of interject that comes in. It doesn't have to be flashback related. It could just be the inner critic interject that comes in and says, "Oh, you're a stupid piece of shit," or, whatever it is.
Okay, everyone, that was part one with Liberty. In the coming weeks, you'll hear more from Liberty. Like I said, we had a really long interview, and it went to a couple of different areas. So I do want you to hear that, but I wanted to take a few minutes and let you hear something that you may not hear anywhere else but at Discover the Beast. Peace. Mm-hmm.